Welcome to Education Today. I'm your host, Kitty Kelly Epstein. I'm really excited to be doing this show today because I get to talk to you about some of the new research that's been done recently about education, what works, what doesn't work in this country, in other countries, and it can be useful to educators and also to parents when looking for the kind of education they want for their kids and when encouraging their schools to use some of this information. I think often the educational research doesn't really get to the people in the schools because there are so many mandates coming from here, there, and everywhere, which may or may not be based on this research and how it operates. So I'm happy that people will get to hear it, and I'm also happy that we're going to have some call-in today. And I'm going to tell you about a couple of the studies, and then if people want to call in and comment or ask questions about those particular studies and topics, we'd be happy to hear from you. I'm going to give you the number now, but I'll start talking a little bit about the studies, and then you can call in if you want to. The number is 1-800-958-9008. That's 1-800-958-9008 is the number to call in if you want to comment or ask a question about some of these studies. So one of the topics that's, I know most people are aware of the fact that cell phones in schools have become a big topic. And if you're not familiar with it, everybody who has kids or works in a school knows that people are very concerned about the fact that a lot of times young people, even especially those who are not doing very well in school, and that's not the only kids that are doing this, but, they're on the cell phone, and that's we kind of understand that. That's human beings linked to the world at this moment in time. The kids didn't create that situation, but they are involved in it because if they're not doing very well in school or they're not very interested or the teacher doesn't like them very much or they've missed a lot of days of school, they're even more likely to be on their phones. So this is something that teachers are very concerned about and have wanted something to be done about. So several states and some other countries have passed bans on cell phones in school, that either they can't be out, the students need to have them in their pocket or something, or they need to be turned in. Actually, it works out that the only thing that seems to work very well is have them be turned into a safe box, which then they can be retrieved from later. The putting in pocket thing doesn't really work too well because it's so nearby. If they hear it ringing or get a notice, and then the teacher has to work with the fact that they may be getting it out of their pocket and so on. So putting it in a box seems to be the thing that works the best. So here is what some of the research indicates. So there was a very large study done in India where there were 17,000 students in 10 colleges in India. So this was enormous. There were two groups in each college. One group was required to deposit their cell phones in wooden boxes when they arrived in class. The other group was not required to do this. So this is a lot of students to have the sample of what happened with them. The result was that for the students who were required to turn in their cell phones, their grades improved significantly, and especially for the lower performing students. Those who had not been doing well at all had even more of an improvement in their progress when they had to turn in their phones. And when they did a study of what the students thought about turning in their phones, the participants in the study agreed that it had had a very positive benefit. They didn't say it was horrible, they felt robbed of their phones, they actually thought it was positive. I've had a little bit of experience with this where students were asked after the staff had decided to not allow cell phones. The students were asked, how resistant would they be? And most of the students actually were not resistant. They will use their phones if they can, but a lot of students seem to actually understand when there's a discussion that it's not doing good things for their education. So that's what happened in the study in India. There's also a study that was done in high schools in Florida, and they found that in the first year of the ban, suspensions increased. So there was a disciplinary effect that kids were getting suspended because they wouldn't give up their phones. But by the second year, this had stopped and grades had improved. So now over 20 states have passed new forms of bans on cell phones, and there's a pretty good indication that it has a positive effect, and hopefully it will happen more and that it will be done in a way that does not have all this disciplinary implication, where there can be kind of a slow rollout, a lot of conversation with the students and their parents, so that a lot of kids don't end up getting suspended. But it does need to be done. And if you have kids in school, you may be thinking about this. And if you don't, you may talk to other people who do have kids in school. So that's one of the studies that people have kind of been waiting for to see what the result would be. There was another study on a completely different topic, and that is the use of urban studies. And we're going to, in a couple of minutes, if you'd like to call in, the number is 1-800-958-9008. This study in the University of Pennsylvania faculty indicated that the use of ethnic studies, which is being done now across the entire San Francisco school district, and has been studied now from 2007, when they began, to the current time, to 2023. So this is a pretty long and big study, bigger than the one they conducted several years ago. So here are the results from the broader use of ethnic studies across the school district. The students who took ethnic studies classes saw their grade point average increase by an average of 0.17 points. So students and this was not in the ethnic studies classes in particular, this was their overall grade point average increased. There were fewer course failures. Enrollment in the courses reduced the likelihood of failing a class by 6 percentage points, a 27% reduction. So students who were enrolled in an ethnic studies class were less likely to fail classes, not just the ethnic studies classes, but any class. And there were very broad benefits across groups. So there were gains that were observed for students, particularly for male students, for Black and Latino students, and for those students who had had lower prior academic performance. So taking ethnic studies had all of these positive impacts, not only on their knowledge of ethnic studies, but on their academic performance. It also improved their college readiness. This intervention led to a 15% increase in students meeting the grade point average threshold required for admission to the University of California system. So the requirements for entering UC Berkeley or UCLA or those colleges are quite high. And having taken ethnic studies increased the percentage of students who were able to meet those requirements by 15%. Also, I found that I'm a big supporter of ethnic studies, but I found that figure to be good and positive and interesting. That study was done by the University of Pennsylvania by some researchers. There was another study done recently at Stanford, and it had similarly exciting results about the impact of ethnic studies on students. And a Stanford professor had some explanations that rang true with me. School is not actually very welcoming for many Latino and African American students. And we could have a long discussion, and we do have sometimes long discussions about why that is the case. but it's a whole different subject, which is not what we're discussing today. But basically, it involves the underlying racism of America, in my opinion, and that finds itself into the schools in who it is who gets to teach. We've talked before about how it's easier for white middle-class people to get into teaching because of all the money involved in the tuition and working as a student teacher for free and so on. So the composition of the teaching force has something to do with the racism the kids find in school. And then there's the curriculum. When it doesn't include ethnic studies, it seems to be excluding Black and Latino and Asian students. And so for a lot of reasons, it seems that the school environment feels more welcoming and observant of students who are from non-white backgrounds than when there is no ethnic studies offered. Dr. Thomas D. is one of those who worked on this study. He does a lot of really good stuff, and I've interviewed him on this show before. And he thinks that having a course that studies one's own history with some detailed and interesting material can change the feeling of students who have not liked school that much in the past. Interestingly, we don't ask students very much about what they like and don't like, what they would want in school and don't want in school. I think individual teachers may ask, but for all the amount of study and work there is done on what should be done in school, the amount of it that's based on students' opinions is quite small. So this is one manifestation of something that has a positive impact on students. So this is quite a lot of research showing that the impact of ethnic studies on students' feeling about school. One of the superintendents in San Francisco remarked that students have the opportunity to approach a course from something that has to do with their own experience. Ethnic Studies in San Francisco does have the advantage of being near San Francisco State, which is the home of the first Department of Ethnic Studies, and we've discussed that on this show also. The people who led the strike at San Francisco State created the Department of Ethnic Studies, the first in the country, and one that has led other places. So some of the teachers who are teaching these ethnic studies classes in the San Francisco schools have studied there, and that gives them an advantage in having a greater amount of knowledge. And now it is being made a requirement. But this, by all justice, which often doesn't prevail in the U.S., but by all justice, people would take note of these results and figure out a way to allow all the kids in the U.S. to study ethnic studies, because this is a very powerful set of statistics about the benefits it had. Of course, I think at KPFA would like all the students to have ethnic studies because it's a good thing to study. But also, we want kids' GPAs to go up and not to fail their classes and to go to school all the time. And ethnic studies instruction does have that kind of impact also. So, again, if you would like to call in and talk about these studies, this research, the number is 1-800-958-9008. Another piece of research that came out has to do with special education teachers. And I don't know if you've ever been a special education teacher or lived with one, you'll recognize the first comment I'm going to make, which is that this is a very, very difficult and time-consuming subject. People who teach special education have many more requirements on their time than other people do. And that isn't always obvious to people because you say, well, you're working with a smaller number of students at a time. Yeah, but you also have a lot of other responsibilities. And so those responsibilities include meeting with parents, figuring out the appropriate program for teaching students that have a lot of different special needs, right? There are students who are autistic. There are students who have physical deaf or blind. There are students who have various sorts of emotional issues. And these are all things that the special education teacher has to figure out, discuss with their principal or their employers and with the parents, and then they have to figure out something which is called an IEP, or an individual education plan. And these individual education plans take a lot of time to figure out what's the correct approach with all the details for each individual special education student, and have the agreement of both the other teachers and the parents and the student so that you can actually work forward on it, is a lot of work. So special education teachers that I know love their work because they love working with the students, but they're also overwhelmed. So one of the things that's happened recently is that there has been an experiment with teachers, special education teachers, using artificial intelligence to help them create the statement of their goals. Now, this is only one very small portion of the job, but it is a part that takes a lot of time. And it's turned out that when an analysis is made of the goals that are created by the special ed teacher with the use of AI, like ChatGPT, for example, the IEPs turn out to be as good or better, often better, than the statements that are created by the teacher by themselves. And that's a logical use of AI, in my opinion, because it is a sort of mechanical process, and AI it's not like you're leaving the AI to teach the kid, but you're creating something which is in a certain amount of ways a mechanical process. So I don't know if special education teachers all over the Bay Area are using this, but it's something that administrators and teachers might consider if they're not doing it already. Again, our number is 800-958-9008. That's 1-800-958-9008 if you have comments or questions about these research studies. I wanted to share also some education thoughts for older people, which I think some KPFA listeners fit in that category. And there has been research on what are things that maintain mental memory and physical acuity for older people. So people hear about, getting memory loss or loss of mental acuity, and, people don't want that. So so there've been some thoughts about what would be effective in making a change for those people. So we do have a caller now. I want to take the caller before I finish about this research. Michael, welcome to Education Today.
Hi, I really appreciate your programming. I just want to uplift all the work that you've been doing, especially around the special needs students. I'm a retired teacher from middle school, high school level in the Bay Area, New Haven Unified, and just want to thank you for your work and for all the work that special ed people are doing right now. I've been retired for almost 15 years, and unfortunately we didn't have the issue with the cell phones and everything that they now have. So anyway, just want to uplift the possibility of using AI productively and not just allowing it to suck our brains dry. So really appreciate your programming.
Thank you for the compliment, and thank you for putting that in that beautiful way. We're all worried about it sucking our brains dry, but hopefully it won't, and this is a good use for it. And thank you for your service as an educator. I'm sure your kids got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Well, hopefully. I wanted to uplift the elective programs that are constantly being cut back, but that's a way of keeping kids engaged.
Yeah.
Because that was my field.
Yeah. You were doing a lot of electives, right? Yes?
Yeah, and I was also considered a general ed teacher when I'd be called in to do IEPs.
I see.
And at our level, we did have the pouch situation when the phone started to become a problem. the kids can work around that, no problem. They bring a second one and they keep it in their backpack and whatever. They're far smarter than we give them credit.
Right. Exactly. But
It's very creative. They
yes.
come up with creative possibilities. Anyway, I do thank you for your programming. I listen to it whenever I can. Right now I'm driving, so I got to shut off. So,
Okay, thank you. Nice
thank you.
talking with you. We have another caller. Morris from Santa Rosa. Welcome to Education Today. Morris.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to
Hi.
Education Today. You had a comment
Yes,
or a question?
Comment. I had the pleasure of being a lecturer at Sonoma State University and teaching in the Ethnic Studies Department.
Great.
And a couple things. One is, I think one area that America gets wrong that doesn't really be helpful, I think there's an overuse of the word racism and things like that. It's like, you don't need to keep, not you, but I mean, as a society, we don't need to keep saying it. We need to demonstrate what it's about. People will get it. It's like children. You don't have to tell them, just show them the experience. They'll figure it out for themselves. So I think we do ourselves a disservice by actually saying the word. That's my first thing. Secondly, teaching, I taught 3 classes. And one thing I noticed was that all the students were more engaged than they normally would be in another topic, because the topic was interesting and something they were not familiar with. And they were excited. Because they were looking at it as if this is true, what else is true?
Yes.
So a lot of students became very good scientists and detectives. Some went on to become like archaeologists studying African American pioneer communities, and it was amazing. It was amazing across the board: Caucasian, African American, Latino. All students were more engaged. I had all the students do a project where they could either do a presentation or whatever they want to do. Just be very creative. One of the Caucasian ladies, she actually came in with 10 inventions that were created by African Americans.
Wow.
And she actually brought them to class and talked about each one.
That's a wonderful testimonial for ethnic studies when it has that kind of impact on the whole educational experience of kids.
Totally.
Even so beyond the subject program itself. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Hope that encourages some more people to start those programs. Yes.
Yes. Thank you for hosting. I listen a lot and I never call in, but today I was like, hey, wait a minute. Let me connect with this. So I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciate you too. I appreciate your call. Thank you. We have Juan from Alameda. Welcome to Education Today.
Good afternoon, listening audience of KPFA. How you guys doing today?
We're doing well. I hope you are too.
Yeah. I've been working as a substitute teacher for the East Bay for 3 different school districts. And one of the things that I've noticed is and I'm sure you guys may have covered, I don't know if you guys have covered this to an extensive, is padding of grades, because what's been going on at the 4-year universities here in the state of California, they've had to offer remedial classes for incoming freshmen for the last, say, 10, 15 years, because their reading comprehension and writing and their math comprehension is not at 12th grade level. And I don't know I have an idea what's contributing to it. I'm all for ethnic studies and everything, but I think there needs to be more emphasis on the sciences, because, and I say this because of what happened during COVID, everybody's lack of science. Reporters and journalists didn't even know how to ask appropriate questions. And the scientific community was trying to give answers in layman terms so people could understand, but sometimes you can't. And I think in general, and I have a degree in engineering, but I could teach ethnic studies because I lived it and I read books from different ethnicities. So, but there has to be something along the line to reinforce the math and the hard sciences. We have enough people in the social science world already. So that's just something maybe to think about in the future. And with respect to the cell phone policy, I know of one high school that's doing a very good job because it's a combined high school and middle school. So at the middle school students, the teachers stand at the door and all students have to put their cell phones in a box and they pick them up at the end of class. And by the time they're seniors, they don't fight it. I mean, there's always going to be students that will use a burner phone and put a fake phone in there. So it's a cat and mouse game sometimes, but it's gotten better. And I think that's the only way that policy will work is if the instructor is at the door and takes in the student's phone until they put the phone in there. And if they pull out a cell phone during class time, there has to be, some sort of punishment, and the parents need to be involved also too.
Yes. Thank you for your insights on these things. It's really helpful when people who've taught call in and give their impressions of what's happening. And I think that about the cell phones and also the whole thing about the number of people teaching science, it does have a lot to do. I mean, there's a teacher shortage, and a lot of it has to do with the fact, I believe, that teachers are underpaid compared to other jobs with similar kinds of qualifications. If you've studied science, which is a hard topic all through college, it's hard to go to work. Although we need science teachers. We need teachers. Hey, everybody, call me up at KPFA if you would consider being a teacher and you have a BA, because we need more teachers, especially teachers who care about kids. Thank you very much, Juan, for your call. We're going to have to wrap up soon. I have been really happy to talk with our guests and to tell you about some of this recent research. There is more to tell that I didn't get to, so we'll probably do another show on some of these research studies pretty soon. And I want to thank you for being with us and thank my co-host, Jaron Epstein, who also has some research to report to you. You've been listening to KPFA Education Today. We're on every Wednesday at 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm your host, Kitty Kelly Epstein, and happy to be with you and happy to get the chance to talk with you about education. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Historian, author, and leading scholar of racism and anti-racism, Ibram X. Kendi.
People are facing real challenges in this moment, and what Great Replacement Theory convinces people that the source of your challenges are those other people, or those people who are strangers, or those people you already don't like. And I think that's what makes this theory so dangerous, because people's livelihoods are suffering right now at the hands of the super rich. And some of those people within the super rich are heavily financing politicians to tell people that they're suffering because of people who are suffering even more than they are.
Storytelling for social change, only on KPFA.
This is 94.1 KPFA and 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, everywhere at kpfa.org.